Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so excited that you are part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from San Diego, California. He's Neil Thompson, and he's here to let us know all about Why Is My Hair Curly? Personally, I'd like to know, why is my hair disappearing more and more each day? I guess that's going to be a mystery that we'll have to wait till another podcast. But hey, if you are trying to solve the mystery, what are we going to do as a family over the holiday break? I have the solution. It's Reading in the New Year. That's right, Reading in the New Year. It is our virtual family literacy fair, and it's all happening Christmas Day to New Year's Day. You can find it at readinginthenewyyear.com. We have assembled fantastic authors from all around the world going to be reading aloud their books for you. We also have some great advice for parents. We also have some great performance videos and some do-it-together activity ideas. Oh, and there are a ton of downloads to provide you and your family with hours of offline fun. It's Reading in the New Year. It all starts Christmas Day. It runs through New Year's Day, and you can find it at readinginthenewyyear.com. Joining us right now from San Diego in the great state of California, he is the author of Why Is My Hair Curly? Please welcome to the show, Neil Thompson. Neil, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm really wonderful. I can't wait to learn more about Why Is My Hair Curly? Maybe you'll be able to tell me, why is my hair falling out of my head? But you don't have to. We just focus on Why Is My Hair Curly? Tell us about this book, please.
Sure. So I wrote the book, and it's about my nephew asking me why his hair is the way it is, and I use science to answer the question. The motivation for the book actually stems from the fact that black people are underrepresented in the STEM fields, and I don't want that to be the case for much longer. So I wrote a book for children around the ages of 5 to 9 for them to know that there aren't any careers that are off limits to them. And so even when they're at that age, if they decide they want to be in STEM, they want to be an engineer, they want to be a scientist, as they get older, it'll be a lot more difficult for anybody to push them off that path. So that's really the reason I wrote the book. And it's the first book of what I hope to be a series in which my nephew will always be asking me a question, and I use science to answer it.
That's really cool. I love this idea of introducing kids to the STEM fields. We've done a lot of shows here talking about young women and helping to encourage girls to get into the STEM field. I think it's also important to help all kids understand that no matter what their race are. What are some of the things you were saying that if you can get kids interested at a young age through your books to investigate the STEM fields, they won't be, someone can't come along later on and push them off that path. Do you think that that's happening right now, that kids of color are actually being steered away from the STEM fields?
Well, I know it happened in my case. Luckily, I had a mother and father that told me that I could do whatever I wanted. So I remember when I was in high school, I had a physics teacher tell me, I remember it was after class, he was asking me what I wanted to do when I finished high school, and I said I wanted to go into engineering, and he said that I should consider another profession. And I mean, if I had parents that didn't encourage me to do whatever I wanted, or if I didn't have the self-confidence in myself to know that I could do whatever I wanted, I might have taken his advice as gospel. I mean, he was a person in authority after all, but luckily I didn't. And unfortunately, there are likely other instances in which other kids like me don't have that backing, don't have those parents that know about engineering and science and STEM and doing whatever you want, building that kind of self-confidence in your children. And so they might get derailed by a physics teacher or someone else in the school system.
Mm-hmm. So I'm really, you piqued my curiosity. Why is your nephew's hair curly, and what kind of science do you introduce kids to through this book?
So when I started the book, I thought that there was going to be a definitive answer to the question. It actually turns out that there are a number of theories as to why his hair is the way it is. One has to do with the origin of black people just, in Africa. So there might have been an adaptive type of reason for the hair being the way it is. Another theory has to do with the differing amount of oil that's in black people's hair as opposed to other races. And ultimately, near the ending of the book, I talk more about consensus, scientific consensus, and how in science you don't necessarily, at least at some point, have a definitive answer, and it has to come down to doing more research to really pin down what that is, and then having other scientists repeat those studies to then be able to say definitively this is the answer to the question.
I think that's a great lesson for kids to learn and to understand how scientists, kind of come to an answer, that it's not, you just don't open up a book right away and boom, there's the answer. There's a lot of research. There's, scientists come up with ideas. Other scientists either refute it or back it up. And for a long time, scientists kind of have to say, well, we're not sure, but right now we think this is the best answer that we have.
Yeah, and when I first found this out, I thought that this would be the end of the book. I couldn't put it out because I didn't know the definitive answer because, as I said, it hasn't been determined yet. But it was actually a scientist friend of mine that said this would be an excellent opportunity to introduce just what you were talking about, scientific consensus, and having to come to that consensus, worldwide.
Yeah. Fascinating that this book was inspired by a question that your nephew had. How much fun was it doing the research? I'm imagining that you were sharing the research with your nephew as you were encountering it. How much fun was that, sharing that with him?
Oh, you'd imagine wrong. I didn't tell my nephew or anyone in my family about the book until I finished it, and I sent them a copy of it in the mail.
And what was their reaction?
I think shock would be the appropriate word.
What were they shocked at? That they didn't think that Uncle Neil could write a book?
Well, probably there might have been a bit of that, but it was certainly something that they weren't expecting. That's for sure.
So, what was after you got over the shock? Did you get a review from your nephew?
Oh yeah, he loved it. He took it into his class and showed it to his classmates and his teacher.
That's really cool. Now, you said that your goal is to make this a series. What other kind of questions do you anticipate your nephew asking you in the series?
He might ask me about skin color. So I think the next one's going to be about why his skin is as dark as it is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then maybe I'll even branch out to even, I guess, non-appearance-based questions. So just questions about the world in general.
I'm really happy that you've created this book. I'm really happy that you've created this for your nephew and kids like your nephew so they can see themselves represented so positively in pages of books. But I also love it that you're answering questions that lots of kids have had for a long time. You and I are looking at each other. We're different. We have different skin colors, different hair. I don't know how tall you are. I'm fairly short. There are all these differences that we have, and it's like I remember as a kid wondering why, and I remember my mom very sternly telling me, "Don't ask those questions. They're rude."
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if my mother asked me those type of questions. I mean, she probably, if she did, she might have said the same thing. Uh-huh. But I mean, when it came to determining what I was going to write for the book, it seemed rather easy to me. I mean, kind of melding hair and science together is something that I haven't seen out there. There are certainly a lot of books out there about black hair, but they come from the perspective of, I guess, loving it or learning to love it. Mm-hmm. But I was never going to write that book because I love my black hair already. So it wasn't something that was on my mind. What was on my mind is why it is the way it is, and then trying to figure out, the answers to that question, and then using science because my background is as an engineer. I worked in medical devices as a product development engineer for a number of years, and I didn't see a whole lot of black people in that job. In fact, now that I think about it, I was the only engineer at any of the companies I worked at, and I was the only black engineer, and I didn't see it as that having to be that case for as long as hopefully not as long as I'm still alive and going forward. And I really wanted to write a book for these younger kids to just, as I said, let them know that engineering's for anybody who has the interest in it, or STEM is for anyone who has the interest in it and is willing to put in the work to excel at it.
Yeah. What has been the and now you got a great review that your nephew loved it. What's been the reaction from other folks who have read the book and maybe teachers?
They like it just because of the difference of it. As I mentioned, there are a lot of books out there about black hair, but this book comes from a completely different angle. And so they really like the fact that it comes from this different angle. And then the message of anyone can go into STEM and it's not just for a certain group of people. They really like that too, because it really enforces that to their especially to teachers, to their students.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine too that, if you shared that story of that teacher telling you, you might want to think about something else, that might be a real eye-opening message for teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as I said, it's unfortunate, but I get the sense that at least for some teachers, even at that level, in the high school level, they see some students as obviously going to go off to college or university and pursue whatever they want. And then for others, they see them as, even without really knowing them, they see them as they're not the college or engineering type, just maybe based on the students they dealt with in the past. As I mentioned earlier, I really want kids to, even regardless of what these teachers say, hopefully it's positive things, but even if it's negative things, they have the self-confidence within themselves to know that I can do whatever I want if I put in the work to do it.
I think that's a real valuable message for all kids to have. And I especially think it's important for kids who may be hearing different messages that you can't do this for whatever reason. Did you ever imagine yourself as you were becoming an engineer that one day you would write a children's book and you'd be out there advocating for kids to check out the STEM fields?
Absolutely not. Writing a children's book was probably the furthest thing from my mind. But when I saw other books out there and I saw that there wasn't anything really that was addressing it from the perspective that I wanted to address it at, I thought, why not? I can write a children's book. I can figure out the way to do it. I self-published the book, so, figuring out how to do that, that entire process, finding an illustrator to write to do the drawings for me. I even hired an editor to look over the story of the book to make sure it made sense. I as an engineer, you're a problem solver by nature, so I just took that same, mentality to put the book together.
I love that, and I love introducing kids to the idea of problem solving at a really young age, because it's an important skill to have. Whether you want to get into engineering or not, it's just that whole kind of mindset that that engineers use to kind of break down the problem into smaller chunks and instead of trying to say to yourself, I need to know the answer to this right away. It's like, well, what's the problem? How can we break this down? And how can we look at piece by piece by piece? As you were saying, you needed to figure out how to self-publish a book, so you needed to find an illustrator, and you did something that a lot of self-published authors forget to do. You got it professionally edited, and then you found a publisher. And so you weren't trying to solve this gigantic problem. You're trying to solve little problems together to make that giant problem solved.
Yeah, for sure. And I recognize that not all black kids and not all kids in general are going to become engineers, but idea of being able to be a problem solver, that can take you through no matter what you decide to do with your life.
Mm-hmm. Were you always a problem solver? Was this something that you learned as you were training as an engineer?
I was not always a problem solver. It's actually kind of funny that I even ended up as an engineer at all. I mean, I came from a pretty strict home, and you kind of did what you were told, so there wasn't any problems to solve because you were just, I guess, what's the best way to put it? I didn't have to think too much about anything because everything was kind of laid out for me, and I was just told to do it. It wasn't until I got to maybe high school that I decided that engineering was something that I wanted to pursue, and then, being good at, I guess, good at math and science certainly didn't hurt.
Mm-hmm. How can we, beyond sitting down and reading Why Is My Hair Curly with our kids and reminding them that they can be anything they want to be, what other kind of things can we do to help encourage kids to check out not only the STEM fields, but whatever field that they want to explore?
Well, it's exposing them to those, the various possibilities, I suppose. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to go every now and then to the zoo or to the local science center and just exposing children to the different things, maybe things that they wouldn't experience even in school is really helpful. Going to museums, that type of thing. Just exposure is everything. Once you're exposed to something, then perhaps you think that you can do whatever you're exposed to.
Yeah. I love that fostering curiosity or modeling curiosity for our kids, when we know that a great way to encourage our kids to read is by letting them see us reading. When they see their parents, their caregivers reading on a regular basis, they're more likely to read themselves. If they see their parents exploring things, exploring the zoo, and it's not just, I have to drag the kid to the zoo or the museum, but just going there with an open, curious adult mind, or actually maybe going as an adult and opening up your curious child's mind and letting your kids see you be curious. That's a great way to encourage that. I'm excited. Why do you think? I know why it's important for kids of color to see themselves in a book like Why Is My Hair Curly, and being encouraged to check out the STEM fields. Why do you think it might be important for a kid, a white kid, to see a kid of color portrayed in a book positively and portrayed in a book as somebody exploring the STEM fields?
Well, I suppose it certainly couldn't hurt for when the time comes when we're all working in the same companies. It certainly would be helpful to know that anyone of any race is there because of their intellect, because of their expertise. And I think by seeing black children in a positive light, in a scientific light as a youngster, you're more likely to see them in that light when you become an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. I think this is a really, really important book for and a fun book for families to have. I think for kids from any race, or ethnicity to check out. I think it's a great way to open up their eyes, to encourage them to explore the STEM fields, but also to encourage them to ask questions and to not be afraid to ask questions. And I think that's a really important message. Neil, how does it feel knowing that there are going to be all these families sitting down and reading your book, and maybe your book might be the launch pad for a lot of families and kids to explore the STEM fields and to get into science and engineering?
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, I certainly, when I wrote the book, it wasn't something that, it was, hopefully when I wrote the book, it was something that I hope would do just like what you're saying. And the fact that it's happening now it's really rewarding. It makes me think that I didn't write the book in vain. That's for sure.
Yeah. Tell everybody, please, where they can find out more about Why Is My Hair Curly, and find out more about Neil Thompson.
They can go to AskUncleNeil.com.
Excellent. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Why Is My Hair Curly, Neil Thompson. Neil, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Matthew Paul Turner. He'll be here to celebrate all the colors of Christmas. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, once again, we want to make sure that you get yourself on over to readingintheNewYear.com. It is our free virtual family literacy fair. It is a whole lot of fun. It all starts Christmas morning and it runs until New Year's Day. Check it out, readingintheNewYear.com. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Neil Thompson. Be sure to check out Why Is My Hair Curly? Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. We want to thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today, for subscribing to the show, for connecting with us on social media. But most of all, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.